I showed you last week how hundreds, possibly thousands of brave Palestinians in Gaza were protesting against Hamas, calling it out as a terrorist outfit, demanding it hand back the remaining Israeli hostages, surrender its weapons and give the people of Gaza a chance at peace. This was encouraging stuff, and as I said at the time, it was remarkable that Hamas had not retaliated against the protesters. Perhaps that was because Israel had decimated the Hamas leadership. Well, sadly, as we probably expected and certainly feared, the retaliation has begun. Firstly, with the execution of a protest leader.
Hamas has tortured and killed 22-year-old Gazan Odai Nasser Sadi. His body was left in front of his family's home over the weekend. He was one of the leaders of the Anti-Hamas protest movement in Gaza, which has gained momentum over the last week, with masses taken to the streets to protest the terror group. A large crowd gathered on Sunday for Nasser Sadi's funeral procession, during which they shouted "Hamas out." The victim's family delivered a speech after his burial, publicly holding Hamas accountable for his death.
A group that belongs to Al-Qassam Brigade kidnapped our betrayed son, Odai al-Rabai, with a silly excuse, and they tortured him to death without taking in consideration his mother's and relatives' feelings. They betrayed him and killed him, thus we shall hit with an iron fist. Those oppressors and criminals that took this Muslim and killed him unjustly.
Odai Nasser Sadi is not the only one. 6 others who were accused of collaborating with Israel were executed on Friday by Hamas.
Just sickening stuff. Hamas are an evil, murderous, jihadist organisation, and you can't expect reason from them. It's why they have to be eliminated. No agreement can be struck with Islamist terrorists. But let me show you how the hatreds of the Middle East are reflected back here. Remember I showed you on Thursday that jazz artist Kelly Green won a Queensland Music Award for a piece called River to the Sea, and then she launched a vile attack on Israel in her acceptance speech? Well, as a result, the Brisbane City Council cut funding to those awards. Good. And Green was sacked by the Catholic college that employed her. Good. She exercised her free speech, she spread horrible lies, and she's paid a price. But of course, to the radical left, she's a hero. Here's the one-time ABC host, Antoinette Lattouf.
A school teacher who's also a jazz musician has just been stood down, and the music body that gave her an award this week, well, their government funding got pulled. Why? Because she dared to speak out against the ongoing murder of Palestinian children, women, healthcare workers, journalists, aid workers and other civilians. Women have always been at the forefront of anti-violence and anti-colonial movements, and surprise, surprise, they're being punished for it.
Now, when I saw that clip on Instagram, I couldn't resist the temptation to reply. So I said if women and men opposed war, they would fight against terrorism and demand that hostages are released, rather than accept daily war crimes over more than 500 days. Yeah, Hamas are the terrorists, slaughtering innocents and holding hostages. Those are clear war crimes. That's where the focus of anyone interested in humanity should be. But you ought to see the hate that came back at me. One suggested that people like me should face a Nuremberg trial. That is, to be tried like Nazis. Can you believe the logic here? You're a Nazi for calling out a terrorist group committed to the genocide of Jews. These people are so ignorant, so warped in their views, it explains their hatred. Another said my comment was disgusting and branded me white genocidal trash, and then they also endorsed the Nuremberg suggestion because they'd like to see them, that is the media, hung as war criminals. Lovely, isn't it? This from the critics of Israel. This from people who claim to care for Palestinians. If they really cared for Palestinians, wouldn't they be directing their hatred at Hamas? Wouldn't they be protesting in the streets now to express solidarity with those brave souls in Gaza who want Hamas to hand back the hostages and surrender? No, they'd rather spread hatred against anyone supporting Israel.